Hello students, today I will be talking to you about a new topic which is theory of games and strategic behavior. We will discuss it in two parts, so today I will be taking up the first part of it. So starting off with the introduction, the theory of competitive markets studies the behavior of consumers and firms, all of whom only accept the prices established by the market. None of these agents has the power to influence the transaction prices. The assumption that market participants accept the given price is only based on the condition that there are a larger number of participants in the market. That means there are conditions like perfect competition prevailing in the market. Further, under conditions like monopolies, there is no fear of competition, and hence the buyers under monopolies do not have the discretion to influence the prices. However, in the oligopoly form of market, the firms determine their prices and output levels by themselves, keeping the objectives other than profit maximization in their mind. In such a case, the behavior of the competitors influences the way a firm decides to operate in the market. This is what is referred to as strategic behavior. The concept of strategic behavior essentially applies to a very popular concept of economics which is called game theory. Game theory is a powerful tool that helps in decision making, especially in conditions like an oligopoly market, where the firms and the sellers are mutually interdependent. Strategic behavior thus involves the examination of an intermediate case where there are at least some participants who can affect each other's behavior in such a way that the behavior of one can alter the choice of others. This way, the participants become strategic in terms of their choice of action because they know that their choice or decision will certainly affect the behavior of others in the market. In reference to this definition, strategic behavior primarily entails the long-term actions and decisions of market agents such as production capacity, research and development R&D, investment, advertisements, or even product differentiation. However, in reference to economic theory or even game theory, strategic behavior is defined as the condition in which a company takes into account the reactions of its competitors which it had previously anticipated. In this context, strategic decisions may even be applicable in the short term as well. Thus, strategic behavior in economic circumstances can best be explained using game theory, that is, the study of how people play the games. Now, talking about the game theory. Game theory is a relatively new branch of mathematics that has been formulated to enable the understanding of conflicting situations and help people find the best outcome out of the available choices. Game theory is also referred to as the science of strategy or optimal decision making by the individuals in a strategic situation. It can be used in various fields for the purpose of understanding the situation and finding the most suitable outcome. For example, in business, it can help to either determine prices, decide whether it should acquire a particular firm, or determine how a business firm should handle a lawsuit. Game theory, for these reasons, is also referred to as multi-person decision theory. The common application of game theory can be found in games such as poker, tennis, chess, etc. But most of these are usually zero-sum games because in such games, the loss of one player is the gain of the other. Since economics also often deals with conflicting as well as cooperative motives, game theory helps to understand decision making in those situations where the players interact with each other and the outcome of the choice made by one depends upon the choice made by the other. The theory has been developed on the premise that for whatever circumstance or game, there always exists some strategy that can help the player win the situation. In this context, it also refers to a business as a game against rivals or even the buyers. That is why economists use the theory as a tool for predicting and interpreting the actions and behaviors of economic agents like firms in a market. The theory uses different models to explain such situation and then helps in understanding what choices would turn out to be the best choice for each player, given the fact that each one of them knows well about the other person's preference or strategy. Now, let's talk a little about the historical background of the game theory. The game theory was for the first time propounded by a genius mathematician, John von Neumann and Oscar Mongerston in 1944. Although traces of the use of the theory can be found in the historical past as old as the Bible, the works of Descartes and Sun Tzu, and the writings of Charles Darwin, but many people argue that the first formal study of game theory began with Daniel Bernoulli, a mathematician born in the year 1700. Bernoulli has been known to have used the concepts of expected utility and diminishing returns. Many other thinkers believe that the first mathematical tool of game theory was originated by Thomas Bayes in the 18th century in England in his popular work called the Bayes theorem. In this theorem, he used the theory of probability as the fundamental base for arriving at logical conclusions. Furthermore, the modern version of game theory can be drawn from the writings of Augustine Cournot in 1838, whose explanation later came to develop in the form of Nash equilibrium, which provides a dynamic approach to explain the best response chosen by a player as a reaction to the action of other players in the game. In 1881, Francis Edgeworth further developed the concept of competitive equilibrium in a two-person economy. Later, in 1928, John Newman published a paper discussing zero-sum games between two people, which also contained the popular minimax theorem. Later, in the year 1950s, John Nash developed non-zero-sum games and explained the bargaining theory. In 1957, Robert Luce and Howard Reifer popularized the game theory, and in 1967-68, John Harsanyi's methodological work on games with incomplete information became a significant development for expanding the field's applicability. Game theory saw a boom of theoretical and applied research in the 1970s, and the technique was well on its way to becoming the most important instrument in the social sciences, including economics. However, throughout the previous few decades, the framework has been firmly established and reinforced, and improvements are still being made today. These days, game theory is a crucial element in the toolkit of every strategist, particularly when handling a scenario involving several entities, each of whose actions are impacted by the decisions of the other entities. Now, we discuss the concepts that are used in the game theory. So, there are following terms which are often used in the game theory research. The first term is the term game. A game is any set of circumstances in which the decisions made by two or more participants will determine the outcome. The second term is the term players, an individual who makes tactical choices within the game's framework is called a player. What is a strategy? A player's whole plan of action for handling every situation that may come up during a game is referred to as their strategy. The word payoff means the amount of money a player wins when the desired outcome is reached. The payment can take any quantifiable form, such as cash or a useful item. An information set, on the other hand, is the data that is accessible during a specific game moment. When there is a sequential element in the game, the phrase information set is most frequently used. The term equilibrium means that when both the players have made their decisions and a decision has been reached, we say the game is said to be in equilibrium. Now, let us discuss how does the game theory work. The interdependence of player strategies is what makes a game what it is. There are two distinct types of strategic interdependence: sequential and simultaneous. In the sequential type, each player moves in turn and is aware of the moves made by the ones before them. In the simultaneous type, each player acts simultaneously without being aware of what the others are doing. In a sequential move game, a player's typical rule is to look ahead and reason backwards. It is the responsibility of each player to determine how the other players will react to his move, how he will reply in response, and so on and so forth. The player utilizes this knowledge to assess his current best choice by projecting where his original selections will ultimately lead. He should not thrust his own logic on others. Instead, he should place himself in their position and consider how they might react. Now, we discuss the types of game theories. There are a few categories of game theories that we will be talking of. First one is the cooperative versus non-cooperative games. In a cooperative game theory, the focus is on the interaction of coalitions or cooperative groups when only the payoffs are known. Instead of being a game between two players, it is a coalition game that explores the formation of organizations and how they divide the rewards amongst themselves. The field of non-cooperative game theory examines the strategies that logical economic actors employ to accomplish their own objectives. The most popular type of non-cooperative game is the strategic game, where the only things mentioned are the possible tactics and the results of combining certain options. Rock, paper, scissors is the basic example of a real-world non-cooperative game. Now we talk about the zero-sum versus the non-zero-sum games. A zero-sum game is the one in which several participants directly compete with one another to achieve the same goal. This implies that there is a loser for every winner. Alternatively, it indicates that the total net benefit that was gained is the same as the collective net benefit lost. Many sports events are zero-sum games in which one team wins and the other one loses. In a non-zero-sum game, each player has the simultaneous possibility to win or lose. In the case of commercial alliances that enhance value and benefit both parties end up gaining instead of just competing and trying to win. At times, stock trading and even investing are viewed as zero-sum games. Towards the end of the transaction, a stock will be purchased by one person and sold by another for the same amount. However, transactions may eventually prove to be profitable to both the parties, since various investors have varying risk tolerance and investing objectives. Let's discuss the simultaneous move versus the sequential move games now. The game theory often comes into play in simultaneous move scenarios in the real life. This implies that each player must continuously make decisions while their rival is also making decisions. In the market, businesses also keep working on the development of their marketing strategies, product development and operational strategies at the same time as their competitors do. Sometimes decision-making processes are purposefully delayed so that one side can observe the other's actions before making their own. This is typically seen in negotiations when one side makes a list of demands and the other side stipulates a fixed amount of time to react and also provide a counter list of their own in response. Then we have the one-shot versus the repeated game type. Game theory can start and even be terminated in just one instance. Like in the case of usual life instances, the underlying competition can begin, move forward and end and cannot be redone. This is usually seen in the case of stock traders who have to make informed decisions about when they should enter or leave the market, because their choice might not be very conveniently reversed or repeated. However, certain games that are played repeatedly seem to go on forever. These kinds of games frequently include the same players every time and each side is aware of the previous outcome. For example, if two competing businesses want to determine the prices for their products, a change in price by one will induce a change in price by the other as well. This never-ending rivalry occurs regardless of the product cycles or the seasonality of sales. Now we move on to discuss the importance of game theory. Economists have benefited from game theory in a number of conventional contexts, including markets and international relations. A few significant uses of game theory are covered in this section. Important insights into competitive exchanges that take place in the marketplace are provided by the game theory. Businesses operating in crowded markets must keep into consideration a variety of factors, and the returns on their investments will always vary. Businesses can identify the most efficient alternatives by employing game theory to simulate choices. Businesses that are able to identify when they are in a losing situation can also try to alter the conditions that give rise to their loss. Businesses that use game theory to identify this result might use tactics like product diversification to reduce the impact of competition. Businesses may set themselves apart from the competition by introducing features or demonstrating excellence through brand awareness. As a result, corporations try to mitigate competitive pressure by making a substantial brand distinction. The idea of oligopolies originates from this analogy only. Now let us discuss the oligopolies. A market that is controlled by a small number of extremely large companies, usually with goods that are distinctive, is known as an oligopoly. It is a type of imperfect competition. These few really strong businesses may avoid competition by capitalizing on their well-known brands, which lessens the likelihood of lose-lose situations. Competitive organizations may find it difficult to make investments that aren't hampered by rivalry. Part of the process that results in the formation of oligopolies is the application of game theory to identify the business strategies that provide the greatest outcomes. Now, how is price competition important? Price competitiveness is a second common application. Businesses are encouraged to reduce their prices in order to undercut the competition. On the other hand, extremely competitive pricing conditions arise when every company in the market reacts in the same manner. While this is a wonderful development for consumers, it means poor revenues for the companies. From the point of view of advertising is yet another such example. Although there is no clear theory that discusses the benefits of advertising for businesses, it is undoubtedly detrimental if a company is not marketing its products, especially when the rival is doing it. Thus, a state of equilibrium is achieved where a large number of businesses invest heavily in advertising despite its high cost and uncertain returns. From the point of view of international affairs, let's discuss the importance. Finally, an example of the game theory that was world-destroying was the Cold War between the US and the USSR. The story shed light on the potentially catastrophic results of a worldwide arms race between the two rational agents. Although it is widely agreed upon by the countries of the world that nuclear weapons should never be used, each state may gain significant strategic influence by projecting a sense of military or nuclear power as a deterrent. An impasse results when two opposing forces possess nuclear weapons but are unable to use them without annihilating each other. The irony is that while both would prefer a non-nuclear standoff, their divergence towards the more costly and lethal nuclear standoff is caused by private incentives. Further, we now discuss the limitations of the game theory. The main problem with the game theory is that, similar to most other economic models, it is founded on the idea that individuals are self-interested, rational agents who maximize their own utility. Human beings are social creatures after all, and they frequently collaborate at their own expense. Game theory, however, is unable to explain why, depending on the social setting and the individuals involved, the condition of a Nash equilibrium is attained at times and not attained at other times. Furthermore, game theory quite frequently fails to take into account aspects of humanity like loyalty, integrity, or empathy. Even if the optimal course of action may be determined by statistical and mathematical calculations, people may choose a different path because of unpredictable and intricate situations that involve manipulation or self-sacrifice. While game theory may be used to analyze a group of behaviors, it is not a very reliable way to predict human behavior. Now, to conclude, I would like to say that in the competitive market conditions, the behavior of one economic agent influences and determines the behavior of another. So, the way one economic agent responds and reacts to the choices and actions of others in the market is called strategic behavior. Game theory is a recently evolved branch of mathematics that is applied to economics and is used to help people make the best choices given the fact that other players have already made their decisions. The game theory was formally introduced in 1944, but the traces of this concept could be seen in the works of scholars and thinkers of the 18th and the 19th centuries as well. The modern versions of game theory can be witnessed in the form of concepts like Nash equilibrium and bargaining theory. There are various concepts that are used in reference to the game theory, and there are various types of the theory as well, like the cooperative and the non-cooperative games, the zero-sum and the non-zero-sum games, one-shot and the repeated games. Game theory has proved to be of paramount significance in economics, especially in business economics. It helps the business entities perceive the market conditions and choose the best behavior that fits into the situation. For example, in a situation like an oligopoly, game theory helps in identifying the best strategies that can provide the greatest volume of profits and a win-win situation for the sellers. Similarly, in the case of price competition, the buyers are at an advantage, although the sellers have to manage with lesser revenues in a competitive market condition. However, like any other theory, even game theory is not devoid of certain shortfalls. The greatest demerit of the game theory is that it is based on the concept of individuals and economic agents who are focused only on self-interest and maximization of their personal objectives. So, under situations where humanity or other human emotions take an edge over economic objectives, game theory fails to recommend the best possible alternatives on the basis of mathematical solutions. People might choose a different course of action governed by self-interest rather than what they ought to decide based on social and humanitarian concerns. With this, we come to the end of today's lecture. Thank you very much.